My sister mistakenly sent me a voice note intended for our mother, and what I heard her say about me had me leaving the next morning with a plan she never saw coming. Imagine this. I got laid off from my dream job, had to move back home, and then an accidental voice memo from my own sister landed in my inbox. It wasn't just a message. It was a confession that tore my entire family apart and exposed a betrayal so deep, I still barely believe it. What would you do if you found out your sister had secretly sabotaged your entire life? My name is Anitra, and at 28 years old, I never expected to be back in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by old swim team trophies and faded posters. After getting laid off from my interior design job in Chicago, moving back with my parents in Maryland was supposed to be temporary, just 3 months to regroup. While my sister Jenna visited with her perfect husband and kids, we'd always had a complicated relationship. Competitive, yes, but deep down, I always thought we were close. At least, that's what I thought until that voice memo notification lit up my phone screen. One accidental message from my sister to me instead of our mom changed everything I believed about my family. Coming back to Silver Spring felt like admitting defeat. Just 6 months earlier, I had been thriving as a junior designer at Hartman & Associates, one of Chicago's most prestigious interior design firms. My portfolio was growing. Clients were requesting me specifically. I was finally paying off my student loans while still affording my tiny but stylish apartment in Wicker Park. Then the recession hit the luxury market hard. Our firm lost 3 major accounts in 1 month, and suddenly, the last hired designers were the first to go. My boss Graham called me into his office on a rainy Tuesday, praised my work profusely, then handed me a severance package that wouldn't even cover 2 months of Chicago rent. After 26 rejected job applications and depleting half my savings, I swallowed my pride and called my parents. They immediately offered their home as a temporary landing pad, assuring me it would be fun to have me back while Jenna and her family were visiting from Boston for the summer. The drive from Chicago to our small Maryland town took 12 hours, each mile feeling like a step backward in my carefully planned life. When I pulled into the familiar driveway of our colonial-style home, Mom rushed out before I could even turn off the engine. "Anitra, sweetie, you made it." She hugged me tight, smelling like the same lavender perfume she'd worn my entire life. "Your father's grilling chicken, and Jenna and the kids are so excited to see you." Dad appeared at the door, waving casually, as if I'd just returned from a weekend trip rather than moving back after 8 years away. As I dragged my suitcase up the front steps, I saw Jenna standing in the foyer, her perfect blonde hair falling in waves around her shoulders. Not a strand out of place despite the summer humidity. "Well, look what the economy dragged in," Jenna said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. She pulled me into a stiff hug. "The prodigal designer returns." "Good to see you too, Jen," I replied, forcing a smile. My niece and nephew, Lillian and Mason, bounded down the stairs to greet me with a genuine enthusiasm that made my heart lift slightly. That first dinner set the tone for everything that would follow. Mom had prepared all my favorite foods, but the conversation revolved entirely around Jenna's real estate empire in Boston. "We just closed on a waterfront property last week," she announced, cutting her chicken with precise movements. $1.7 million. Tyler handled the negotiation brilliantly. Her husband, Tyler, smiled modestly, though I noticed how he straightened his shoulders at the praise. "Just did what any good agent would do." "Nonsense." Dad beamed. "Not every agent could close a deal that size in this market." I pushed my mashed potatoes around my plate. "That's impressive. I actually saw some job postings at design firms here in town. Morgan & Wells is looking for someone with commercial experience, which I have from the Riverside Hotel project in Chicago." A strange expression flickered across Jenna's face so quickly I almost missed it. Something like alarm, quickly masked with a bright smile. "Oh, but I thought you loved the Chicago design scene," she said. "Wouldn't taking a job here be settling?" Mom jumped in before I could respond. "Well, I think it's smart to keep options open, but there's no rush, dear. You should take some time to decompress after your setback." The way she said setback made my layoff sound like a personal failure rather than an economic reality that had affected thousands of professionals. I noticed Jenna and Mom exchanging a quick, almost imperceptible glance. Growing up 4 years apart, Jenna and I had always been positioned as opposites. She was the practical, sociable one who followed rules and charmed teachers. I was the creative dreamer who questioned everything and spent hours rearranging furniture in my bedroom. When Jenna became homecoming queen, I skipped the dance to attend an art installation. When she got straight A's, I brought home report cards full of A's in arts and English, but B's and C's in everything else, which somehow always dominated the conversation. Later that night, as I unpacked in my childhood bedroom, I found my old sketchbooks filled with room designs and furniture ideas. Some of the concepts I'd developed as a teenager had actually formed the foundation of my portfolio that got me into design school. I flipped through the pages, remembering the pure joy of creation before career pressure and competition entered the picture. A soft knock interrupted my nostalgia. Jenna stood in the doorway, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "Peace offering," she said, extending one to me. "I know coming home isn't easy." I accepted the glass, making space for her on the bed. For a moment, it felt like old times, before adult responsibilities and competition had created this invisible barrier between us. "Your portfolio from Chicago," she said, gesturing to the leather case propped against the wall. "Can I see what you've been working on?" I hesitated, but then pulled out the portfolio. As I showed her my projects, explaining concepts and challenges, I noticed something odd. Rather than the polite disinterest she usually showed in my work, Jenna was asking detailed questions, taking mental notes. When I showed her my concept for a sustainable commercial space that had won an industry mention, she paused longer than necessary, studying the design elements with unusual intensity. "This is really good, Annie," she said, finally using my childhood nickname. "Really innovative." It was the first genuine compliment she'd given my work in years. And despite everything, it warmed something in me. Maybe this time back home could heal some of the old wounds between us. But as Jenna left my room, I overheard her on the phone in the hallway. Her voice low but clear. "No, she just got here." "Yes, but I don't think." "Listen, I need to make sure this works out like we discussed." An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. I was being paranoid. The stress of unemployment and moving home was making me suspicious of innocent conversations. Still, as I fell asleep in my too small childhood bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the surface of our family reunion, currents were moving in directions I couldn't yet see. I just didn't realize how quickly I'd be pulled under. 2 weeks into my stay, the initial awkwardness of returning home had settled into an uncomfortable routine. Mom made breakfast every morning, asking about my job search with a mixture of concern and what felt increasingly like judgment. Dad retreated to his woodshop in the garage, avoiding the feminine tension in the house. Jenna worked remotely from the dining room, conducting real estate calls in a professional voice that carried throughout the house. The first truly odd moment came when I entered the kitchen to find Mom and Jenna huddled over coffee, speaking in hushed tones. They immediately straightened and separated when I appeared. "Good morning," I said, reaching for a mug. "What are you two whispering about?" "Just discussing Mason's birthday party plans," Mom said quickly. Too quickly. "In July?" "His birthday is in November," I pointed out. Jenna laughed, a high, unnatural sound. "We book venues months in advance. The good places fill up fast." I nodded, unconvinced, but let it go. Maybe I was being oversensitive. Later that afternoon, my former classmate Maya texted me unexpectedly. "Heard you're back in town. My boss at Riverfront Designs is looking for someone with big city experience. Interested in an interview." My spirits lifted immediately. Riverfront was the most prestigious design firm in the area, handling everything from luxury homes to boutique hotels along the eastern seaboard. I texted back an enthusiastic yes, before heading downstairs to share the good news. I found Jenna and Mom in the living room, flipping through family photo albums. "Great news," I announced. "Maya Winters just texted about a design position at Riverfront. I have an interview next week." Mom's expression was carefully neutral. "That's nice, dear. But isn't Riverfront rather small compared to your Chicago firm?" "Actually, they've expanded a lot in recent years," I explained. "They handle major projects up and down the coast. It could be a really good opportunity." Jenna's reaction was even stranger. Her smile looked plastered on, her eyes darting quickly to Mom. "That's wonderful. Truly, though, I thought you wanted a break before jumping back in." "I never said that," I replied, confused. "I've been applying to jobs since I arrived." "Of course you have," Jenna said smoothly. "I just want to make sure you're not settling for the first thing that comes along out of desperation." The word desperation stung, and I felt my cheeks flush. "I'm not desperate. Riverfront is a legitimate opportunity." "I'm sure it is," Jenna said, her tone suggesting exactly the opposite. Well, good luck with it. I retreated upstairs, bothered by their lackluster response, but trying to focus on preparing for the interview. As I updated my portfolio, I heard Jenna's voice floating up from below. The words indistinct, but her tone urgent. Curiosity getting the better of me, I quietly moved to the stairwell. We need to make sure she doesn't get it, Jenna was saying. You know how she is when she gets fixated on something. My stomach dropped. Was she talking about me? About the job? I couldn't hear Mom's response, but Jenna continued. I know, but trust me, it's for the best. She'll thank us later. I backed away from the stairs, my mind racing. Was I misinterpreting? Could my own sister actually be trying to sabotage my job opportunity? It seemed paranoid, even for the competitive relationship we'd always had. Maybe she was talking about something else entirely, someone else. But the seed of doubt had been planted. And over the next few days, I began noticing patterns I might have otherwise dismissed. When I mentioned needing to update my portfolio website, our internet mysteriously slowed to a crawl. When I scheduled a practice interview with an old college friend via video call, Jenna suggested a family outing at exactly the same time. When I mentioned which projects I planned to highlight in my interview, Jenna made subtly undermining comments about how regional clients might find those concepts too urban. The gaslighting reached its peak during family movie night. We were watching a romantic comedy, and the main character lost her job in the city and returned to her small hometown. Remind you of anyone? Jenna said with a laugh, nudging Mom. It's a common story arc, I replied evenly. Sure, but most people bounce back faster, Jenna continued. She seems a bit like you, living in a fantasy world about her talents. The room went silent. Even Tyler looked uncomfortable. Jenna, Dad said in a warning tone. What? I'm just saying, Anitra has always had big dreams. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you have to face reality about where your skills actually are. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my popcorn. And what reality should I be facing exactly? Girls, Mom interjected. Let's just enjoy the movie. No, I want to hear what Jenna thinks my reality should be, I insisted. Jenna waved a dismissive hand. Don't be so sensitive. I was just making conversation. You know how Jenna jokes, Mom added, as if this explained and excused everything. I stood up. I'm going to bed. Enjoy the rest of the movie. In my room, I paced back and forth, replaying the conversation and countless others from the past 2 weeks. Was I being overly sensitive, as they suggested, or was there something more calculated happening? That night, I made a decision that went against my usual trusting nature. I activated the voice memo app on my phone and set it to record during family conversations. Not to be sneaky, I told myself, but as a sanity check, to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting things through the lens of my own insecurity. Little did I know, this decision would reveal far more than I was prepared to discover. The morning of my interview with Riverfront Designs dawned bright and clear. I'd been preparing for days, reviewing my portfolio, researching the firm's recent projects, and practicing answers to potential questions. Despite the strange undercurrents with Jenna, I felt confident and ready. This could be my fresh start, a way to rebuild my career and eventually move out of my parents' house. I woke early, carefully applying makeup and styling my hair into a professional updo. I chose my navy blue interview suit, the one that had landed me the Chicago job 3 years earlier. For luck, I added the silver bracelet my grandmother had given me before she passed away. As I was putting on my earrings, my phone chimed with a notification, a voice memo from Jenna. My first thought was that she was finally extending an olive branch, perhaps wishing me luck for the interview. I tapped play, holding the phone to my ear as I continued getting ready. Mom, I need to talk to you about Anitra's interview today. Jenna's voice came through clearly, but with a tone I'd never heard before. Hard. Calculating. I froze, mascara wand halfway to my eye. This wasn't meant for me. She'd accidentally sent it to the wrong person. I should stop listening, I thought. This is private. But then I heard my name again, and something in Jenna's tone made it impossible to turn off. I called Riverfront yesterday, Jenna continued. Spoke to someone in HR. I told them I was a former colleague from Chicago with concerns about her work ethic. Suggested they might want to verify her references more thoroughly. My hand began to shake. The mascara wand clattered to the counter. Mom, we can't let her get established here. You know what Dad said about possibly helping her start her own small design business if the job search doesn't pan out? Can you imagine? After I've worked so hard to be the successful one in the family. I could hear my mother's muffled response, though not the exact words. Of course I feel bad, Jenna replied, sounding anything but remorseful. But remember that business plan she created in her final year of design school? The one for the Sustainable Interior Design Consultancy? Well, I took that concept when she left it on her laptop during Christmas break. Those ideas became the foundation for the eco-friendly property division that made my real estate business stand out in Boston. My knees weakened, and I sank onto the edge of my bed. The sustainable design concept had been my passion project, something I'd worked on for months. I'd noticed similarities in Jenna's business model, but had chalked it up to coincidence, or perhaps unconscious influence after our discussions. The truth is, Jenna's voice continued, dropping lower, I've always been jealous of her talent. She makes everything look effortless. Do you know how hard I have to work for every client, every sale? She sketches something beautiful in minutes while I'm grinding away. It's not fair. There was a pause then. Yes, I know she's struggling right now. That's why this is the perfect time to make sure she finds something more suitable. Something that won't put her in competition with me. Another pause. I was thinking we could introduce her to Rick, Tyler's friend from college. He's not particularly ambitious either. He wouldn't mind dating someone unsuccessful. The voice memo ended there, presumably because Jenna realized she was recording rather than making a call. For several minutes, I couldn't move. My body felt disconnected from my brain as the implications washed over me in nauseating waves. My own sister had actively sabotaged my career. My mother was complicit. They had discussed my failure as if it were a foregone conclusion, something to be managed rather than a temporary setback to help me overcome. I rushed to the bathroom, barely making it before I was sick. After splashing cold water on my face, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back looked shell-shocked, pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. I played the message again, needing to confirm I hadn't imagined it. Each word cut deeper the second time. The casual cruelty, the admission of theft, the ongoing conspiracy to keep me in my place. Worst of all was the revelation that my mother hadn't defended me. She had participated in this conversation, apparently agreeing with Jenna's assessment and plans. The two people I trusted most in the world had been working against me, possibly for years. I checked the time. The interview was in 90 minutes. I had to pull myself together somehow. Canceling wasn't an option. Not when I now understood what I was up against. With mechanical movements, I fixed my makeup, covering the evidence of tears and shock. I straightened my suit, put on my professional mask, and walked downstairs with my portfolio. Mom was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. Jenna sat at the table typing on her laptop. Both looked up when I entered. You look nice, honey, Mom said. Big day today. Want some breakfast before your interview? Jenna asked, her smile not reaching her eyes. You need to keep your strength up. The normality of the scene was surreal after what I'd just heard. They had no idea what had been revealed, no clue that everything had changed. No thanks, I managed to say. I'll grab coffee on the way. Good luck today. Jenna called as I headed for the door. Though, you know what they say about luck, it's when preparation meets opportunity. Her words, once seemingly supportive, now rang with double meaning. I nodded without turning around, afraid my face would betray me. In my car, I placed my phone on the dashboard holder and pressed play on the voice memo one final time, listening to my sister's voice detail her betrayal as I drove toward an interview she'd already attempted to sabotage. By the time I pulled into the Riverfront Designs parking lot, something had crystallized within me. Beyond the hurt and shock was a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I now understood the playing field and the players. The only question remaining was what I would do with this knowledge. I nearly collided with a delivery truck on the way to Riverfront Designs. My hands shook on the steering wheel, and twice I had to pull over to collect myself. The voice memo played on repeat in my mind. Asterisk, I've always been jealous of her talent. We can't let her get established here. I called Riverfront yesterday. Asterisk, somehow, I arrived at the sleek glass building that housed the design firm. I sat in my car for several minutes, breathing deeply and reapplying my lipstick in the rearview mirror. The woman who stared back at me looked composed on the surface, but her eyes held a new hardness. Maya was waiting in the reception area, her familiar freckled face breaking into a smile when she saw me. Anitra, so good to see you, she said, hugging me. Are you okay? You look a little pale. Just interview nerves, I lied. Thanks again for recommending me. Maya lowered her voice. Listen, something weird happened. Someone called yesterday asking about you, claiming to be a former colleague with concerns. Grayson, the creative director, mentioned it this morning. My stomach twisted. What did they say? Nothing specific, just that the firm should verify your credentials thoroughly. Grayson thought it was strange enough to mention it to me since I recommended you. Corporate sabotage happens in this industry, but I never expected it for a position at our level. I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral despite the crushing confirmation of Jenna's interference. People can be surprisingly competitive. Well, it backfired completely. Grayson is now extra interested to meet you. Anyone who inspires preemptive sabotage must be worth talking to, he said. A small flame of hope kindled in my chest. Perhaps Jenna's plan would fail after all. The interview room was bright and airy, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Grayson Turner, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and trendy glasses, stood to greet me. Anitra Taylor, a pleasure to meet you. Your work on the Riverside Hotel in Chicago caught my attention when Maya mentioned you. That ceiling installation was inspired. Despite everything, professional pride straightened my spine. Thank you. That project had some unique challenges with the historical preservation requirements. For the next hour, I focused entirely on the interview, pushing thoughts of Jenna's betrayal aside. I walked Grayson through my portfolio, discussed my approach to sustainable design, and answered questions about my experience with commercial and residential projects. Near the end, Grayson leaned back in his chair. I should mention we received a strange call yesterday. Someone claiming to have concerns about your work. I rarely mention such things in interviews, but it was unusual enough that I'm curious about your reaction. I took a deep breath. I appreciate your transparency. Without knowing exactly what was said, it's hard to address specific concerns, but I can tell you that my departure from Hartman and Associates in Chicago was purely economic. They laid off their 5 most recently hired designers when they lost several major accounts during the recession. Grayson nodded. That tracks with what I've heard about market conditions there, and frankly, your portfolio speaks for itself. He closed my presentation on his tablet. Which brings me to the next step. We'd like to offer you a position as a senior designer. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Senior designer? Not junior or associate. Your Chicago experience puts you ahead of our current associates. The salary would be $85,000 annually, with benefits and a quarterly project completion bonus structure. We'd need you to start in 2 weeks. Is that something you're interested in? The salary was $15,000 more than I'd made in Chicago. The position was a step up, and it was happening despite Jenna's attempt to sabotage me. Yes, I said, finding my voice. I'm definitely interested. Thank you for this opportunity. After finalizing details and signing preliminary paperwork, I walked to my car in a daze. The job offer should have been the highlight of my day, the solution to my problems. Instead, it was overshadowed by the voice memo revelations. As I sat in my car, my phone rang. Jenna's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, but she called again immediately. Taking a deep breath, I answered. Hey, how did the interview go? Her voice was bright with false enthusiasm. For a split second, I considered confronting her, unleashing all my hurt and anger. But something stopped me. A strategic voice whispered that knowledge was power. And right now, I knew far more than she realized. It was fine, I said, keeping my tone neutral. They seemed interested. Well, don't get your hopes up too high. Regional firms can be very selective, but I'm sure something will work out eventually. Thanks for the encouragement, I replied, the words tasting bitter. Listen, I need to run some errands. See you at dinner. I ended the call and sat still, processing. I couldn't go back to that house tonight, not knowing what I knew. Not with the pretense of normalcy when everything had been revealed as a lie. Instead of driving home, I went to my bank. I withdrew most of my remaining savings, enough to secure temporary housing and survive until my first paycheck. Next, I found a modest extended-stay hotel and paid for a week in advance. In my hotel room that evening, I sat cross-legged on the bed with my laptop, trying to make sense of the day's revelations. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Mom and Jenna, asking where I was, when I'd be home for dinner. I responded vaguely about meeting with former classmates and needing some time to process the interview. As night fell, I stared out the window at the lights of the small city I'd once been so eager to escape. Now, it offered something unexpected. A a fresh start away from the toxic family dynamics I'd never fully recognized until today. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about reclaiming my narrative, my talent, my future. And as much as part of me wanted simple revenge, a wiser voice urged justice instead. Jenna had built her success partly on my stolen ideas. She'd actively worked to suppress my opportunities. My parents had enabled this dynamic our entire lives. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing, organizing my thoughts into what wasn't a revenge plot, but a strategic retreat. A plan to establish boundaries, reclaim my professional identity, and perhaps most importantly, to ensure that Jenna finally faced the consequences of her actions. By midnight, I had mapped out my next steps. I would accept the riverfront position, but request a 2-week delay in starting. During that time, I would gather evidence, secure my position, and prepare for the confrontation that would inevitably come. For the first time since hearing the voice memo, I felt a sense of calm purpose. I wasn't running away. I was moving forward on my own terms, and Jenna had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I waited until I received a text from Mom saying they were all going shopping at the mall. I needed 30 minutes alone in the house. I drove to my childhood home, using my key to enter silently. The familiarity of the space felt different now, tainted by what I knew. Moving quickly, I went to my room and packed essential clothing, my professional documents, and a few sentimental items into 2 suitcases. I left my furniture, books, and most possessions behind. They were just things. What I needed now was freedom. As I finished packing my room, a thought occurred to me. Jenna had admitted in the voice memo to stealing my business plan years ago. Was it possible she had other evidence of her deception? Driven by this hunch, I quietly entered the guest room where she and Tyler were staying. I felt uncomfortable snooping, but reminded myself of what was at stake. After a careful search, I found a folder tucked in her briefcase labeled Green Home Initiative. Inside were printouts of my original sustainable design concepts from design school, complete with my handwritten notes. Some pages had Jenna's writing overlaid, adapting my ideas to real estate applications. Next to it was an email chain with Graham Hartman, my former boss in Chicago. The exchange was dated 2 weeks before my layoff. Asterisk Jenna, as requested, I've reviewed the situation. While Anitra's work is excellent, she would indeed be included in any reduction if we needed to cut staff. I appreciate the heads up about your family's concerns regarding her career trajectory. Sometimes these difficult moments become redirections to more suitable paths. I'll keep this conversation in confidence, of course. Asterisk my hands trembled as I took photos of the emails and the folder contents. The layoff that had devastated me, that I'd thought was purely economic, had been influenced by Jenna's interference. She had reached out to my boss under the guise of family concern to ensure I would be among those let go. The betrayal cut even deeper than I'd imagined. This wasn't just recent sabotage. This was years of calculated undermining disguised as sisterly concern. I replaced everything exactly as I'd found it and continued my swift packing. In the kitchen, I left a brief note, asterisk taking some personal time to think. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. Please respect my space, Anitra. Asterisk no accusations, no revelations, just enough to buy me time while I implemented my plan. At the extended stay hotel, I transformed my room into a command center of sorts. I set up my laptop, organized the evidence I'd gathered, and began methodically building a foundation for my new life. First, I formally accepted the position at Riverfront Designs, but requested a start date in 2 weeks. I need to tie up some personal loose ends before beginning this new chapter, I wrote. Grayson responded almost immediately with approval. Next, I reached out to former colleagues in Chicago, carefully asking about the circumstances leading to the layoffs. Without revealing my suspicions, I gathered information about the timing and selection process. 2 separate conversations confirmed that the layoff decisions had seemed oddly specific, targeting certain employees despite their performance records. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my family. Asterisk Anitra, where are you? We're worried sick. Asterisk mom. Asterisk kiddo, call us. Your mother is upset. Asterisk dad. Asterisk this is childish. Whatever is bothering you, we can talk about it. Asterisk Jenna. I responded with minimal information, claiming I needed space to process the job interview and some personal realizations. I'm safe and will be in touch soon, I texted. Please respect that I need a few days alone. Their responses were revealing. Mom expressed worry, but quickly pivoted to guilt. After all we've done taking you in, this is how you thank us. Dad seemed genuinely concerned, but deferred to Mom and Jenna's interpretation of events. Jenna's messages became increasingly controlling, demanding to know where I was staying and when I would stop this ridiculous behavior. I maintained radio silence for 48 hours after that, using the time to continue my research. I discovered that Jenna's real estate business had heavily marketed its innovative eco-friendly approach, language lifted directly from my business plan. She had won a regional business award specifically for these initiatives, giving interviews about her original vision for sustainable housing. On the third day, I had an unexpected stroke of luck. One of the first clients I was assigned at Riverfront was Meridian Development Group, the largest commercial developer in the region. Their CEO, Lawrence Carter, was interested in expanding into eco-friendly residential communities and wanted preliminary design concepts. During our first meeting, Lawrence mentioned he was actively looking for a real estate partner for the residential portion of a major new mixed-use development. "We need someone with innovative approaches to sustainable housing," he explained. "The traditional developers in the area aren't forward-thinking enough for what we envision." The opportunity was too perfect to ignore. "Actually," I said carefully, "I might know someone with expertise in that area. Let me make some inquiries." I didn't mention Jenna directly. I didn't need to. The seeds were planted for what would come next. Back at the hotel, I began creating a presentation for Meridian that showcased my original sustainable design concepts, the very ones Jenna had stolen. I didn't reference her business or make any accusations. I simply presented the work as it had originally been conceived, with my signature aesthetic and technical specifications. Meanwhile, my family's messages grew increasingly frantic. A week had passed since I'd left the note. Mom left tearful voicemails. Dad called repeatedly. Jenna's messages oscillated between concern and irritation. "This isn't like you, Annie," she texted. Asterisk, "we're family. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it." Asterisk, the irony wasn't lost on me. She was right. This wasn't like me. The old Anitra would have confronted them immediately, emotional and unprepared. She would have accepted their explanations and gaslighting, eventually doubting her own perceptions. That version of me was gone. During my research into Jenna's business, I discovered some concerning patterns in her recent transactions. Several property listings had questionable disclosures regarding environmental assessments, precisely the area where she claimed expertise. In one case, she had apparently withheld information about soil testing results from potential buyers. It wasn't my goal to damage her career, but these findings suggested her ethical corner-cutting extended beyond family relationships. I made an anonymous report to the State Real Estate Commission, providing documentation without revealing my identity. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. As my second week away from home progressed, I focused on establishing myself at Riverfront. I visited the office daily, setting up my workspace, meeting colleagues, and diving into the Meridian project. Everyone welcomed me warmly, impressed by my portfolio and ideas. Grayson took me aside after a productive meeting. "I don't know what that caller was trying to accomplish, but they did you a favor. Your work is exceptional, Anitra. We're lucky to have you." His words validated what I'd always known about my abilities, but had allowed family dynamics to make me doubt. With distance from their influence, my confidence was returning. By the end of the 2 weeks, several things had fallen into place. My presentation for Meridian was complete and scheduled for the following Monday. My apartment search had yielded a small but charming place within walking distance of the office. And I had finally decided how to handle the inevitable confrontation with my family. I called my mother on Friday evening, keeping my voice calm and controlled. "I'm ready to talk," I said when she answered. "Not at the house. I'd like all of you to meet me at my new office on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. "Your new office?" Mom sounded confused. "What are you talking about, Anitra? We've been worried sick. Your sister is beside herself." "I'm sure she is," I replied evenly. "Monday at 3. I'll text you the address. Please make sure Dad and Jenna are there." "But this isn't negotiable, Mom. Monday at 3, or we don't talk at all." After hanging up, I took a deep breath. The plan was in motion. In 3 days, everything would change. Not because I sought revenge, but because the truth needed to finally see the light of day. Monday morning arrived with a clarity of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I dressed carefully in a tailored charcoal suit, with a deep emerald blouse that brought out the green in my hazel eyes. Power dressing wasn't just about looking professional today. It was armor for the confrontation ahead. My first official day at Riverfront Designs began with a team meeting where Grayson introduced me as their new senior designer. The welcome was warm, with Maya giving me an encouraging thumbs up from across the conference table. By 10 o'clock, I was settled at my new desk, preparing for my presentation to Meridian Development Group. Lawrence Carter arrived with his team at 11, impeccably dressed and radiating the confident energy of someone used to making multi-million-dollar decisions. As we shook hands, he smiled appreciatively at the portfolio displayed on my tablet. "Grayson tells me you've prepared something special for us," he said, taking a seat in our largest conference room. "I believe I have," I replied, launching into my presentation. For the next hour, I walked Lawrence and his team through my vision for their eco-friendly residential community. I presented comprehensive designs incorporating sustainable materials, energy-efficient layouts, and innovative community spaces. The concepts were evolved versions of my original business plan, the very one Jenna had stolen and built her reputation on. But my designs went further, incorporating everything I'd learned in Chicago and my own continuing research into sustainable practices. "This is exceptional," Lawrence said when I finished. "It's exactly the fresh perspective we've been looking for. Most local firms are stuck in conventional thinking, but this," he gestured to my renderings, "this is visionary." "Thank you," I said, maintaining my professional composure despite the internal validation his words provided. "There's one more thing I'd like to discuss. Meridian will need a real estate partner for marketing and selling these properties," I continued carefully. "Someone who understands the unique value proposition of sustainable homes." Lawrence nodded. "We've been interviewing firms but haven't found the right fit. Do you have a recommendation?" "I might," I said. "If you're available at 3 this afternoon, I could make an introduction." Lawrence checked his calendar and agreed to return for the meeting. As he and his team left, Grayson approached me with an impressed expression. "That was masterful," he said. "Lawrence rarely shows that much enthusiasm, and you've already lined up a real estate connection for them. That's initiative." I smiled, not correcting his assumption. I believe in comprehensive solutions. The hours until 3 o'clock passed in a blur of orientation tasks and paperwork. I arranged the conference room, carefully setting up my laptop to display specific slides for my presentation. At 2:45, I received a text from Mom. *, we're parking now. This building looks expensive. * at 2:50, Lawrence returned, curious about the mysterious real estate contact I'd promised to introduce. I asked him to wait in Grayson's office, momentarily explaining that I needed a private conversation with the potential partners first. At precisely 3 o'clock, the receptionist called to announce the arrival of my family. I asked her to send them to conference room B, then took a deep breath and went to meet them. Mom entered first, her expression a mixture of worry and indignation. Dad followed, looking uncomfortable in his rarely worn suit jacket. Jenna came last, her face carefully composed, but her eyes darting around, taking in the prestigious office surroundings. "Anitra," Mom began immediately. "What is going on? 2 weeks without a word, and now this mysterious meeting? We've been sick with worry. Please take a seat," I said, gesturing to the conference table. "I appreciate you coming." "Of course we came," Jenna said, settling into a chair with practiced grace. "We're family. Though I must say this dramatic disappearing act seems excessive, even for you. The subtle dig might have wounded me 2 weeks ago. Now, it simply confirmed I was making the right decision. I wanted you to see my new workplace," I said calmly. "I've accepted a position as senior designer at Riverfront Designs. Today is my first official day." Mom's eyebrows shot up. "Senior designer? But you just interviewed, and you didn't tell us you got an offer." Dad leaned forward. "That's wonderful news, kiddo. Congratulations." Jenna's reaction was more measured, her smile not reaching her eyes. "How unexpected. I thought you were still considering options." "I was very clear about my priorities," I replied. "This position aligns perfectly with my experience and goals." "Well," Mom said, clearly flustered by my composed demeanor. "This explains the absence, I suppose, though you could have simply told us instead of disappearing." "Actually, my absence had another cause," I said, taking a seat across from them. 2 weeks ago, I received a voice memo from Jenna. A memo that was clearly intended for you, Mom, not for me." The color drained from Jenna's face. Her eyes widened with the realization of her mistake. What voice memo? Without responding, I tapped my phone, and Jenna's voice filled the conference room. Asterisk Mom, I need to talk to you about Anitra's interview today. I called Riverfront yesterday. Asterisk as the recording played, I watched their reactions. Mom covered her mouth, eyes darting between me and Jenna. Dad's expression transformed from confusion to shock to anger. Jenna sat frozen, her carefully constructed facade crumbling with each damning word from her own mouth. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Dad was the first to speak. Is this true? He asked Jenna, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. Did you try to sabotage your sister's job opportunity? Jenna's composure fractured. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. I was just concerned that she was rushing into something out of desperation. And my business plan? I asked quietly. The one you stole in design school? Was that concerned too? I didn't steal it, she protested weakly. I was inspired by it. That's different. I opened my laptop, displaying the photos I'd taken of her folder with my original designs and her annotations. Inspiration doesn't usually involve direct copying or taking credit for someone else's original concepts. Mom attempted to salvage the situation. Girls, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Jenna would never intentionally, Dad interrupted, his voice uncharacteristically firm. Just stop, Linda. You knew about this. You were part of that conversation in the recording. Mom fell silent, her face flushing. There's someone I'd like you to meet, I said, standing up. I went to the door and gestured for Lawrence to join us. As he entered, I made the introductions. Lawrence Carter, CEO of Meridian Development Group. Lawrence, this is my family. And this, I nodded toward Jenna, is Jenna Taylor Morrison, the real estate agent I mentioned. Recognition flickered in Jenna's eyes. Everyone in local business circles knew Meridian Development Group and its influential CEO. This was potentially the biggest client opportunity of her career, walking into the room at the exact moment her deception had been exposed. Ms. Morrison, Lawrence said, extending his hand. Anitra tells me you specialize in eco-friendly properties. That's precisely what we're looking for in our new development partner. Jenna glanced at me, confusion warring with opportunity in her expression. She shook his hand automatically. Yes, sustainable housing is my passion. Wonderful, Lawrence continued. Though I must say, the concepts your sister presented this morning were remarkably innovative. She mentioned they were evolved from initial work she did in design school. You must be proud to have such talent in the family. The implication was clear. Lawrence, whether intentionally or not, had just credited me with the original concepts Jenna had built her reputation on. Jenna's smile became strained. Anitra has always been creative. I turned to Lawrence. I should be transparent, Lawrence. I invited my family here today to address some concerning issues regarding those very concepts we discussed this morning. Lawrence looked between us, sensing the tension. Is there a problem I should be aware of? Before I could respond, Jenna stood abruptly. Excuse us, Mr. Carter. This is a family matter that requires private discussion. Of course, he said smoothly. Anitra, perhaps we should reschedule our follow-up? Actually, I replied, I think it's important you hear this. Jenna's eco-friendly real estate approach was built on concepts she took from my business plan in design school. Concepts I've evolved and presented to you today. The room went silent. Lawrence's expression remained carefully neutral, but his eyes sharpened with interest. He was, after all, a businessman who had navigated countless complex situations. I see, he said finally. Family business collaborations can be complicated. This wasn't a collaboration, Dad said, surprising everyone. According to that recording, Jenna took Anitra's work without permission and has been actively working to suppress her sister's career. As her father, I'm ashamed and appalled. Jenna turned to him, eyes wide. Dad, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, he interrupted. I've watched you two compete your entire lives, but I never imagined it had gone this far. Lawrence cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give your family some privacy. Before you go, I said, I want to be clear that I didn't arrange this meeting for revenge or to damage anyone's reputation. The work I presented today stands on its own merits, regardless of its history. And Jenna, his business experience is valuable regardless of how some of her concepts originated. Lawrence studied me for a moment, then nodded slightly, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. Integrity noted, Anitra. I will be in touch about next steps. He shook my hand and left the conference room, closing the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, Jenna turned on me. How could you? Do you have any idea what this could do to my business? I didn't expose you, I said calmly. You exposed yourself when you recorded that voice memo. When you called my potential employer to sabotage me. When you stole my work years ago and built your reputation on it. I built my business through hard work, she snapped. Yes, I used some of your concepts, but I was the one who executed them. I was the one who took the risks. You were off playing designer in Chicago while I was building something real here. And that justified sabotaging my career? Calling my boss in Chicago, making sure I would be laid off. Mom gasped. Jenna, you didn't. Jenna's silence was confirmation enough. Dad stood up, pacing the conference room. All these years, we thought you two were just naturally competitive. We never imagined, he looked at Mom. And you knew about this? You helped her undermine your own daughter? Mom's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted what was best for both of them. Jenna seemed so threatened by Anitra's talent. I thought if Anitra found a different path, something less competitive with her sister, they could both be happy. So, you decided what my path should be, I said quietly. Without my input, without respecting my choices or my abilities. The truth hung in the air between us. Decades of family dynamics suddenly exposed in their dysfunctional reality. What happens now? Jenna asked finally, her voice small. Are you going to report me to the real estate board? Tell all my clients. I shook my head. I'm not interested in destroying you, Jenna. I just want to live my life and pursue my career without interference. The anonymous report about your disclosure practices was made because clients deserve transparency, not to hurt you personally. Her head snapped up. That was you? The commission is investigating me because of you. The commission is investigating you because of your actions, I corrected. Just like your current situation is the result of your choices, not my response to them. I stood up, gathering my materials. I have work to finish today. I've booked an apartment starting next week. I'll come by the house tomorrow to collect the rest of my things. Anitra, Mom began, reaching for my hand. Please, can't we talk about this? We're family. I gently withdrew my hand from hers. Yes, we are. And that's why this hurts so much. Family is supposed to support each other, not sabotage each other. I need time and space to figure out what kind of relationship I can have with you moving forward. As I walked them to the reception area, Dad hung back slightly to speak privately with me. I had no idea, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I'm so sorry, Anitra. I should have seen what was happening. It's not entirely your fault, I replied. They were careful to keep you in the dark. Still, he shook his head. I'm proud of you, not just for this job, but for how you handled this. You could have sought revenge, but you chose a different path. His words were a balm to the still raw wound of betrayal. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. As they left, Jenna glanced back at me, her expression unreadable. For a brief moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. Then she turned away, following our parents out of the building that housed my new beginning. I returned to my desk, emotionally drained, but strangely peaceful. The confrontation I dreaded was over. The truth was out. What came next would be challenging. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, building my life on my own terms. 6 months after that pivotal confrontation in the Riverfront conference room, I stood at the windows of my office watching autumn leaves dance across the parking lot. So much had changed in such a relatively short time. My promotion to design director had come through just last week, following the unprecedented success of the Meridian Eco-Community project. My small but stylish apartment now felt like home, decorated with pieces that reflected my aesthetic without any influence from family expectations. The most profound changes, however, were internal. The journey from betrayal to rebuilding had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. In the immediate aftermath of the confrontation, I had experienced a tsunami of emotions. Rage that left me screaming into pillows in my apartment. Grief that ambushed me at unexpected moments. Paralyzing anxiety about trusting anyone again. For 3 weeks, I threw myself into work during the day and collapsed into exhausted, dreamless sleep at night. It was Maya who finally intervened, showing up at my apartment with takeout and concern in her eyes. You're not okay, she stated simply. And pretending you are isn't helping. That night, I finally let myself break down, completely telling Maya everything. Her suggestion that I try therapy was gentle but firm. Some betrayals are too big to process alone, she said. She was right. Dr. Winters, a therapist specializing in family trauma, helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't just sibling rivalry gone wrong. It was a systematic pattern of undermining and gaslighting that had shaped my self-perception for years. Your success threatens the family narrative, she explained during one session. Your sister as the achiever, you as the dreamer. Your parents enabled this dynamic because it was comfortable and familiar, not because it was true or healthy. Gradually, I built a new support network. Colleagues at Riverfront became friends. I joined a local design association and connected with other creative professionals. I started a small side project renovating furniture for a women's shelter, finding healing in creating beautiful spaces for those rebuilding their lives. As for my family, those relationships evolved in unexpected ways. Dad was the first to reach out meaningfully, asking to meet for coffee a week after the confrontation. He came prepared with a letter he'd written, detailing all the times he'd seen my talent shine throughout my childhood, but had failed to advocate for me when it mattered. I thought staying neutral was the right thing, he explained, his voice breaking. I never realized neutrality in the face of wrongdoing is just another form of harm. Our relationship slowly rebuilt on a foundation of honesty rather than avoidance. He began visiting my office occasionally, genuinely interested in my projects. When I restored an antique drafting table I'd found at an estate sale, he helped me reinforce the joints and refinish the wood, our hands working together in his workshop like they had when I was a child. Mom was a more complicated story. Her initial reaction had been defensive, insisting she'd only wanted to keep peace in the family. Over time, and likely influenced by Dad's changed perspective, she began to recognize the damage her enabling had caused. Our conversations remained somewhat superficial, but at least they were no longer filled with subtle comparisons to Jenna or minimizations of my accomplishments. And Jenna was the most surprising evolution of all. The Real Estate Commission investigation into her disclosure practices had resulted in a suspension of her license for 3 months and mandatory ethics training. Meridian Development Group had ultimately chosen another agency for their project. The professional consequences she'd feared had indeed materialized, though not through any vindictive action on my part. I had expected anger, blame, perhaps even further attempts at sabotage. Instead, about 4 months after the confrontation, I received an email with an attached document. The subject line read simply, "What I should have said years ago." The attachment was a formal letter acknowledging that her eco-friendly real estate approach had been based on my original concepts. She had sent copies to the State Real Estate Board, the local business association that had given her awards, and several industry publications. At the end of the email was a personal note. *, this doesn't fix what I did. Nothing could, but it's a start. When you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen. *, it wasn't an explicit apology, but from Jenna, this public acknowledgement represented a seismic shift. I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process this unexpected development. 2 weeks later, we met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. The conversation was awkward, halting, nothing like the polished interactions of our past. Jenna looked different, less perfectly put together, more authentically present. "Tyler left," she said abruptly after we'd exchanged uncomfortable pleasantries. Said he didn't know who I really was anymore. Took the kids to his parents for a while. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I never wanted her children to suffer. She shook her head. "Don't be." It forced me to look at myself. Really look at what I'd become, at what I'd done to you. She met my eyes directly. "I was terrified of you, Anitra. Always have been. Your talent, your authenticity, everything seemed to come naturally to you." "Nothing came naturally," I corrected her. "I worked incredibly hard. You just never saw it because you were too busy trying to ensure I didn't outshine you." She nodded, accepting the harsh truth. "I know that now. I've been talking to someone too, a therapist, trying to understand why I felt so threatened by your success that I actively tried to prevent it." We talked for nearly 3 hours that day, peeling back layers of our shared history, examining the competition that had defined our relationship since childhood. There were no magical reconciliations or tearful embraces, just 2 adults beginning the long, difficult process of rebuilding something that had been broken for as long as we could remember. Family therapy followed, with all 4 of us sitting uncomfortably in Dr. Winters's office, learning to communicate without the destructive patterns of the past. Progress was nonlinear, with breakthroughs followed by setbacks, moments of connection interrupted by old resentment surfacing. But slowly, incrementally, we began to forge new relationships based on who we actually were rather than the roles we'd been assigned. Today, as I prepared for a family dinner, our monthly attempt at rebuilding connections, I felt neither the dread of our early post-confrontation gatherings, nor the naive hope for perfect resolution. Instead, I carried a grounded acceptance of our flawed, complex reality and the ongoing work it required. The most profound lesson of these 6 months wasn't about family dynamics or professional validation, though those were significant. It was about the quiet power of standing in your truth without being consumed by bitterness or the desire for revenge. Justice didn't come from ensuring Jenna suffered consequences equal to the pain she'd caused me. It came from breaking free of the narrative that had constrained me, from reclaiming my talent and worth regardless of anyone else's attempts to diminish them. My phone chimed with a text from Dad. On our way, bringing that wine you liked last time. I smiled, gathering my keys and bag. The future remained uncertain. Our family relationships works in progress rather than neatly resolved storylines. But I moved through the world differently now, confident in my boundaries, clear in my worth, free from the need for external validation. The voice memo that had shattered my world had also, paradoxically, been the catalyst for building a truer, stronger self. Not because betrayal makes you stronger, that's too simple a narrative, but because facing reality, however painful, opens possibilities that denial never could. Have you ever discovered someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were, and that truth forced you to completely redefine your life? Tell me your experience in the comments below. I really want to hear from you.